What photosynthesis is, what we need for it. We also talked about cellular respiration and how photosynthesis and cellular respiration are complementary reactions. So the reactants for photosynthesis are the products of cellular respiration, and the reactants of cellular respiration are the products of photosynthesis. Okay? Photosynthesis, carbon dioxide goes in, and water and oxygen comes out. What is this cell that I'm looking at right here? What is this cell?
Stomata.
Yeah, the stomata. Okay, good. Stomata. And stomata is controlled by what type of cells, Abe?
Guard cells.
The guard cells. Perfect. So guard cells are a great example of a specialized cell that has a specific function. Okay, so guard cells have the function to prevent excess water loss and also regulate gas exchange. Good. Okay, let's talk about this photo a little bit more while we're up here. What is the very top layer of, or what is my outermost layer of cells called, or tissue? The what, sorry?
The dermal tissue.
Yeah, the dermal tissue, perfect. Or the epidermis. Call it whatever you would like. I'm okay with both. Okay, so the epidermis or the dermal tissue, good. Good. We can't really look at any other tissue on here, so that's good. Okay, so yeah, so dermal tissue is on the outside. Stomata regulates gas exchange. Good. Okay, so gas exchange and leaves. So this is done by stoma, or so if there's just one, it's called a stoma. So it's singular. Okay. If there's multiple, it's stomata. So stoma is here. That is controlled by guard cells. Okay. If we didn't have these stoma or stomata, air could still enter into the leaf by passive diffusion, but it would take a lot longer for that to happen, right? Remember we talked about diffusion and passive transport and stuff, right? And how things can diffuse across the cell membrane, but it would take a really long time, or it would take longer than it does when it is transported through protein channels, right? Protein channels allow us to transport goods, I guess we could call them, at a much higher pace. Okay, so a leaf has specialized cells to maximize its ability to exchange gases and transport nutrients throughout the cell. What type of tissues transports nutrients throughout the cell? Yeah, Abe?
Vascular.
Vascular tissue, good. And in particular, is it phloem or xylem that transports nutrients? And let's say nutrients is food. Yeah, phloem. So food flows. So sugar will go in phloem, and water and minerals go through xylem. Okay. Good, yeah. So here, right here is what we call a vascular bundle, okay? This is like essentially our veins, right? Right, we use veins to transport blood throughout our body. Vascular bundle is composed of xylem and phloem, and xylem and phloem is transported throughout the plant. Okay, so Sometimes you'll see that as a vein, or sometimes you might see it as a vascular bundle. Okay, and why might we see these vascular bundles kind of in the middle of the leaf here? Why do we have our veins not at the surface of our skin? Like not at not our big veins anyways, like our arteries.
Protection.
Protection, yeah, exactly, right? Same kind of thing here. They're gonna kind of want to hide it a little bit, so like food goes through phloem, right? So phloem is a really rich nutrient source for like some insects. So aphids can like go on leaves and penetrate the cuticle and suck out those juices, right? Not good for the plant. I mean, not ideal, right? It'll probably survive, but it's gonna try its best to keep its nutrients for itself. Okay? So, now we're gonna talk about different types of tissues and photosynthesis, okay? So a little bit more in depth here. Okay, so one, dermal tissue. This is the epidermis. It is on the top and the bottom of the leaf and is very thin. We have guard cells called stomata, mostly on the underside of the leaf. And influenced by guard cells, stomata will control the rate of gas exchange depending on environmental conditions, right? We've talked about this a couple times. So if it's sunny out, those stomata are going to be open. If it's dark out, those stomata are going to be closed, right? I'm pretty sure we're going to talk about the mechanism right away here. Sure do. Okay, so this first one here is what happens for stomata in the presence of light. Okay? You guys should, I don't know. You should know the general process, okay? I'm going to say this is a need to know here. There's going to be like 6 steps here, and we should know this process. Okay? So this is when the sun is present. Okay? This is a little cool sun up here. Okay? He's shining. He's giving some warmth. Okay? So, remember, guard cells regulate the opening or closing of stomata, and stomata are cells that make up dermal tissue. Okay? So, step number 1. So, light, when it strikes the leaf, it is going to stimulate guard cells to accumulate potassium ions by active transport. Okay? By active transport. So does this require energy, active transport? Yes, it does. So what do we know about our concentration gradient right away? What direction does active transport push things in? High concentration to low concentration? No, other way around, right? Low concentration to high concentration, okay? So we know that outside it's going from low concentration to high concentration. So inside these actual guard cells, there's going to be higher potassium concentration relative to its external environment, okay? So that requires energy. So that is done by active transport, okay? So step 1, we have potassium ions going into the guard cells, okay? Once there are more potassium ions in the guard cells, this is going to create a concentration gradient, and then water is going to follow those guard cells, okay? When water entered those guard cells, they kind of like inflate and it creates an opening, okay? You know those like inflatable like donut tubes that you can go on a lake with kind of thing? It's like a little crappy inflatable, right? When there is no air in it, it's kind of like just kind of all over itself, right? There's not really like the hole in the middle for you to go through, right? But once you blow it up with air, right? Then it's starting to become rigid, and then you're gonna see that little opening where you can go into, right? Same kind of thing here. As water enters the guard cells, the like inflatable raft kind of fills up, and then there's going to be an opening of the stoma. Okay? Is that an okay analogy? Donut tubes and stoma. Okay? Water rushes in, it becomes inflated, and then the stoma opens. Okay? So cells, guard cells will swell up due to turgor pressure, and then the stomata opens. Okay? So light strikes the leaf, potassium enters the cells, water follows that, the cells will swell, and then the stomata opens. Okay? So that is when there is light present. Okay, so we should know these 4 steps. Okay? Okay, so next, this is when we have no sunlight. So when there is no sunlight, potassium ions will leave the guard cells. As there is no longer a concentration gradient, water will leave the guard cells. The stomata will close, and then they're closed. Okay? Then they are preventing water loss. The sun's gone away. The plant's like, okay, I'm not going to do any more photosynthesis. The sun's gone, so I'm going to close up those guard cells, and that's going to be my day. It's essentially kind of like locking up your doors before you close up the shop. Okay? So when there's no sunlight, potassium leaves, water leaves, the stoma becomes like limp, right? And then that channel is going to become closed. Okay? So guard cells are necessary to prevent excessive water loss. So when water goes from the plant, a liquid form, into gas, this is known as transpiration. Okay, so guard cells are necessary to prevent transpiration. Plants that live in hot and dry environments will have less stomata compared to those plants that live in humid environments. Why might that be? Why would there be less stomata in like a cactus than there would in like a rainforest plant? Harriet, I haven't picked on you for a while. What do we know? Okay, let's back up. What are guard cells necessary for?
To prevent excessive water loss.
Yep, perfect. To prevent water loss, right? What do you know about a desert? Is it wet there typically, or is it pretty dry? Dry, right? So, dry, like plants that live in dry and air environments are going to have less stomata because they want to minimize that chance for losing water, right? Okay. Conversely, plants that live in tropical rainforests, there's lots of water around, so they're not necessarily concerned with losing a bunch of water, right? So they're going to have more. And that's actually going to be beneficial for them, right? If they have more stomata, they can extract water from the air, right? And then they'll have more water to grow, right? Has anybody been to like a tropical rainforest before? It's pretty sweet. Where did you go, Mitch?
Costa Rica.
Costa Rica, nice. Did you go and like walk through it and stuff? And okay, so when you're walking through it, how much sun actually reached like the forest floor?
Not much. It was real dark in there.
Right? And where's all of it going? Where's all that sunlight going?
Oh yeah, to the top of the trees.
Exactly, right? All the plants want that sunlight. So even within a rainforest, there is a lot of competition for that sunlight, right? Soon as like a tree gets knocked over in the rainforest, all of the plants that are in that like new sun zone, right? If that makes sense. Like, say you have like a 100-year-old tree that falls down, and now you have like a, I don't know, say like 100-foot radius of sunlight that's reaching the fourth floor now, right? In that area, there's going to be intense competition between all of those plants because they're like, finally, I got some sun because that big honking tree's been stealing it for 100 years. So now we're just going to grow, and we're going to grow as fast as we can in attempts to catch that sunlight, right? Because as Mitch said, not a lot of light reaches the forest floor in a canopy. Yeah, definitely go to a rainforest. Rainforests are super cool. Big trees too. I like that. Okay, so the second type of tissue involved in photosynthesis is going to be ground tissue. So within ground tissue, so we know it makes up the majority of the plant. Okay, so we're gonna have a few different types of ground tissue. Okay, so the first area of mesophyll or of ground tissue is the mesophyll, and that is right here. Okay, so it's the area in between the dermal tissue. All of that is the mesophyll. Okay, you can kind of think of it as filling the area between the epidermis. Okay, mesophyll, it fills up everything between the epidermis. Okay, within that mesophyll, we have a couple different areas as well. So pretty much at the top side of the leaf, okay, so the sun is going to be coming from up here. Okay, so it's coming this way. So why would we have lots of palisade tissue cells up here and not as much down here, especially if we're taking into consideration the light is striking from the top? Maria, what do you think?
Because you need light for photosynthesis, and that's where photosynthesis takes place. So if it was on the bottom, it wouldn't get as much light, so it wouldn't work good.
Excellent answer. Okay, yeah. So we want to arrange, or plants want to arrange these so they can maximize photosynthesis, right? They want to be as efficient as possible. So yeah, so we're gonna have quite a tight packed palisade layer close to the top of the leaf. Okay, palisade tissue cells. These are the sites of photosynthesis. So make sure we know what cells are responsible for photosynthesis. So sites of photosynthesis in palisade tissue cells. I remember that because palisade starts with a P and photosynthesis also starts with a P. So photosynthesis occurs in the palisade tissue cells. Okay, and next we have the spongy mesophyll tissue. Okay, so this is like the bottom half of the leaf. So kind of underneath, right in here. Okay, that is going to be our spongy mesophyll tissue, or the spongy layer. And these are loosely packed cells which will allow for gas exchange and diffusion throughout the leaf. Okay, so these are kind of separated out a little bit, and this is just to allow like the phloem, or the food that is produced during photosynthesis, to make it into our vascular bundle and be transported throughout the plant. Okay, so yeah, this is not packed as tightly because we want to let materials be transported, right? If we're all like crammed in one corner of this room, we're not going to be able to move as easily as we would if we're spread out like we are kind of now, right? Okay, so these three layers of cells make up ground tissue in the leaf, at least. Okay, so I know a lot of the times in science when we're talking about anatomy, we're gonna get like a really nice animation like this. However, when you look at something in a microscope, it's not always going to look that neat, unfortunately. Okay? But here is a light micrograph of a leaf. Okay, so this is taken with a light microscope. It's approximately 70 times magnification. Okay, so the question is, where is the mesophyll area? Where are the palisade tissue cells? And where is the spongy mesophyll layer? Okay, so talk to your peer about. All right, so, and we've already talked about this today a little bit. Yeah, so with regards to photosynthesis, so tissue number 3 is vascular tissue. So 2 main types, xylem and phloem. So xylem provides the leaf with water and minerals needed for photosynthesis, okay? And phloem tissue distributes sugars formed from photosynthesis, okay? And I'll show you guys a pretty cool diagram to kind of show us how that stuff is transported throughout the plants. And we've talked about this already too. So xylem and phloem are typically bunched together, called vascular bundles. So that's what we have right there, is a vascular bundle. I'm going to bring in celery tomorrow, and we're actually going to look at the vascular bundles within celery and see how water is transported up there. It's not that exciting. It's like a 3-day experiment, so like by the time that it gets to Friday, we should see some cool stuff. Okay, perfect.